Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War news update, second part thereof for the 23rd of September 2024. It's a little bit later than I'd like to have been. I've just spent 3 full hours doing the mapping for the mapping update. Luckily, it just takes forever. Luckily, JR and Benny Pie have been working on automation for the mapping so that I have more time, and my goodness, that would be amazing if that can happen. So 3 hours, and I was going to do a mapping update, and now Google Maps or Google Earth has just gone nuts. So I'll do my military aid segment for you. Just going to start with the new victory plan that has been, some points of it have been sort of leaked to the Times, or they published some. So this is Zelensky going to the US, going to Biden, saying, here's a victory plan that you asked for so that you can either lift restrictions or give us more weaponry or something. You wanted this, here it is. Apparently, according to the Times, it includes providing Ukraine with security guarantees similar to Article 5 of the NATO Charter. So they don't get to join NATO, then they get some kind of bilateral, I assume this is with the US security agreement, continuation of Ukraine's operation in the Kursk region in order to secure a territorial trump card, and requests for specific modern weapons, that's pertinent to this video, and providing Ukraine with international finance assistance likewise. I've heard that he's wanting to make the victory plan Trump-proof, which means that it would need to be binding if Trump came into power and wasn't so friendly with Ukraine. So I don't know how that's going to play out. Anyway, that's that. At the same time, Zelensky's been in Scranton at the Army ammunition plant in Pennsylvania, Scranton, Pennsylvania, where they produce 155mm shells, and they've absolutely ramped up production there. Cooperation between Pennsylvania and Zaporizhia will also expand, and Zelensky's noted that if President Biden does not support Ukraine's victory plan, the country will continue a war of attrition, but with really heavy losses. Now, this I think is a great image there. Victory in the field begins in the factory. That's absolutely great statement there. So true. And that Zelensky signing one of those shells that he's that factory is involved in manufacturing. Blue collar workers there involved in obviously the manufacture of this. Zelensky getting to see them. I won't play you the whole of this video, but I think it's worth watching this. So Zelensky getting to have a wander around and see what's what, understanding what's involved and the precision that is involved in the manufacture of that, meeting these workers, shaking hands, a really good PR opportunity. There's a commission who's now advising him on stuff like strategic industries. He was a strategic industries manufacturer.
The Scranton Army Ammunition Factory, almost 400 people strong, Mr. President. Another 1,000 about a half an hour from here. I think it's safe to say that, Mr. President, you've shown the world what courage and resiliency looks like. Your profound sacrifice and those of the Ukrainian people have been nothing short of remarkable. And from all of us in this part of the world, we thank you for your courage and your resiliency. And I can tell you from General Dynamics, 100,000 people we're behind you. We know your victory is the world's victory. And so without further remarks, I pass to you, the workers of Scranton, and President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Thank you so much. This applause is not to me, really. Everything is to you and for your work. Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here with my team. And started, as I said to colleagues, started my visit to America from your city, from your plant, from Pennsylvania, and just some number. You said that 400 people work here, but I wanted very much to come here and to thank you. 400 people saved millions of Ukrainians because of the result of your work. I'm very thankful, just from ordinary Ukrainians to you. And what can I say? Thank you so much. You helped us to survive against Putin invasion. And thanks to your families, and God bless, everything will be very good with your families and with you. God bless America, and Slava Ukraini. Thank you again very much for everything, guys. Thank you.
So good stuff there. Good to see him being appreciated and appreciating those workers involved in that. It's such an important establishment, this factory in particular. It's interesting. Northrop Grumman, an American defense manufacturer, has just signed a memorandum of understanding, I think, with Lithuania. I think they're going to be producing a lot more medium caliber ammunition for sort of Bushmaster chain guns and stuff like that. So these factories are super important for, obviously, American defense, but also in this case Ukrainian defense too. Okay, for those concerned about the delivery of Scalp missiles to Ukraine, says French aid to Ukraine, so these are the Storm Shadow equivalents, I redirect you to the statement published in the Ministry of Armed Forces on the 23rd of June. Quote, the Ministry of the Armed Forces has asked MBDA, that's French MBDA France, for 40 future deliveries, including missiles that can be reconfigured. The Minister of the Armed Forces has already mentioned, without explicitly saying so, the reconfiguration of Scalps during a hearing several months ago. As a reminder, this scare quotes production is renovation, and I quote again the Ministry of Armed Forces, quote, beyond this delivery of 600 A2SM bombs, so the guided glide bombs, the hammer bombs, in 2024 expected to be delivered to Ukraine. The Ministry of Armed Forces now aims to produce 1,200 for 2025, so a real uptick there, which means multiplying production by 2. The same logic is applied to the Scalp missile orders, which allow deep strikes. On the basis of this latest information, says French aid to Ukraine, we can conclude that deliveries will continue into 2025 and will double. That is the... I believe what the French are doing is getting back a load of Scouts from other nations that they previously sold them to. I think that's at least part of it, maybe renovating those and then getting them to Ukraine. British Foreign Minister David Lammy has urged the US to allow Ukraine to use Storm Shadow missiles to strike targets in Russia. He emphasised that now is the time for courage, warning that challenges of the war in Ukraine will worsen by late 2025 and 2026. So the UK is really keen on Storm Shadows being allowed to be used inside Russia, but it seems to be that the US is stopping this. And the question is whether this is a kind of blackmail situation, as in nothing to do with ITAR or the regulations involved in exports and the use of such ordnance in the exported or by the exported country, or whether, which of those two is going on here. Now, I know Benny Pie has been looking into this and he's going to supply me with a whole bunch of data that he's gleaned on this, so he's become a bit of an expert on this topic, and I'm going to lean on him probably tomorrow for that information. Germany to Ukraine said, let me briefly talk about the Eurofighter Typhoon. According to the Ukrainian Minister of Defense Rustem Umerov, Ukraine is currently negotiating the delivery of these fighter aircraft and also the Saab Jazz 39 Gripen. Apart from the fact that the delivery of Gripen would make much more sense for various reasons, and even that was blocked by the F-16 coalition, I doubt a delivery of Eurofighter Typhoons from Germany at least would happen under the current government. Nobody needs to delude themselves. I doubt Scholz would allow that, besides the fact that we are honestly not in a position to do so. What I can certainly imagine, however, is that Germany would at least not block exports to Ukraine. In April 2023, Germany agreed to the export of MiG-29s from Poland to Ukraine within a few hours. The 5 MiG-29s originate from stocks of the former GDR. I just wanted to make that clear, as I can already see the questions. And someone asked, do you think the delivery of the Meteor air-to-air missiles to Ukraine would be possible before the end of the war, or would it be blocked because of fear of escalation? And German said, I wouldn't rule out anything, but I'm honestly the wrong person to ask since I haven't invested time researching that matter. But things like the Meteor, super important, I think, going forward in terms of the ability for Ukraine to strike long distance. Okay, quote here from The Economist. Serbian arms exports have quadrupled since 2020. Some 800 million euros worth, so that's $890 million worth of ammo has gone to Ukraine since the invasion began. Bosnia's exports in the first 4 months of 2024 nearly doubled compared with the same period last year. So this is, again, we see this with Slovakia, a case of the government saying, not really sure that we're supporting, morally, politically supporting Ukraine. Obviously problematic there anyway, but we'll also sell them whatever they need, and just booming industry as a result of the willingness of those countries to sell them those weapons, even though they say politically it's wrong. But will happily sell that stuff to them. So there's a real disconnect between morality and the thirst for money with those countries, at least. US and Turkey are discussing the transfer of Russian S-400 Triumph anti-aircraft systems to the control of the US military to get F-35 Lightning II jets. So F-35s are on the way to Turkey. Turkey's a member of NATO, but it kind of straddles the fence and is a little bit funky as a nation. But nonetheless, as a NATO member, it is receiving F-35s from the US. Incredibly important. However, part of the agreement, in fact, we can look at what the agreement is according to John Ridge here. So a reminder that per section 1245 of the financial year 20 NDAA, so the National Defence Authorization Act, no funds can be used to transfer F-35 or associated technical data to Turkey unless the Secretaries of State and Defence certify that Turkey no longer possesses S-400 or other Russian military equipment that threaten the Joint Security Forces' security. In other words, we ain't going to sell you F-35s if you have Russian equipment that you can, I guess, test on the F-35s and then conceivably sell that knowledge, information, technology to Russia. You are in a compromised position or potentially compromised position. So you need to offload all of that old Soviet equipment before we get you. You need to be all in with the Western or not have it at all, because we're not allowing to operate both and therefore be in a position to screw us over, which is absolutely sensible. And the great thing here is that if the Turkish are really sensible, it's really serious about receiving those F-35s, then they will have to offload those S-400 air defense systems. And hopefully the US will be, and they ain't going to Russia, matey. They're coming to our airbase in Turkey, our US airbase in Turkey, and we're going to get those to Ukraine because they desperately need that stuff. So Denmark will provide 16 million euros to Ukraine to rebuild its energy infrastructure. This was announced by the Danish Minister of Climate, Energy and Supply, Agard, during a meeting of the Group of the Seven Countries, G7. Ukraine has received verbal approval from its Western partners to fund its missile program developed by the Ministry of Defense. Defense Minister Rustem Umerov confirmed this, noting that missile development is a top priority for Ukraine and its allies. Absolutely. Like I've said, they need to outproduce missiles, long-range missiles, well, all sorts of missiles, but long-range missiles and drones that can be fired into Russia. If they aren't going to receive the stuff from the West, and if they aren't going to be allowed to use it, they need to make their own, and they need to use them. They need to scale up that production massively, get some kind of technological advantage over the Russians in terms of resilience of these to electronic warfare, and then the ability to fire them much more accurately to hit those targets, etc., so that they can get that competitive advantage over the Russians. And then we have this Ukrainian Defense Minister, again, Umerov, announced the reform of the Territorial Recruitment and Social Support Centres, TCC, is in progress. Over the past year, mobilization rates in Ukraine have tripled. Currently, around 3.5 million Ukrainians have received electronic military registration documents through the Reserve Plus system. So this is an automated app. This app that they have to do. Ukrainians seem to be very good at using apps to do pretty much everything. They've got this centralized app that does most of their government stuff that they need to do, such as, if you need a driving license or whatever, you just go through that. And 230,000 military personnel are using electronic services via the Army Plus platform. Now, this is massively worrying. I would like to know more details about this, but Colby Badwar reports, and remember, I've said since the beginning, literally the very beginning of this war, I think I wrote it in one of my articles, was that the only way Russia wins this war is if China gets involved and helps them. Now, they've been doing that in an increasing manner and to an increasingly worrying degree. And that has included things like the Golf buggies, those Desert Cross 1000-3, but also things like body armor, helmets, drones, intelligence. I think satellite imagery is going to help Russia, and now it appears that Russian forces are using Chinese-made ZFB-05 armoured vehicles in Ukraine. Increased procurement of military equipment from China is Russia's next logistical escalation. Given their cooperation with North Korea and Iran has gone unpunished, will we do anything to stop this? I am absolutely not petrified, but honestly, this is one of the big worries. Ukraine will not prevail in this war if China helps Russia on an industrial military scale. This is really worrying. but I need to know more about that. Now, Russian developers are allegedly using a drone equipped with an RPG that has allegedly been used at Ukhdar. This is something that the Ukrainians have also done too. So there's always going to be this arms race going on between the two nations, and whenever one nation has an asymmetrical, an advantage over the other in terms of anything really, especially if it's a new kind of piece of tech or a new usage, like the thermite dropping drones, those Dragonfire drones that the Ukrainians have used really effectively, the Russians were straight onto making their own iteration of that. And so there is only a sort of short window of advantage over the other side when it comes to things that aren't particularly like something like the very best satellites using incredible cameras to get superb resolution in real time. Now that's not something you can just do yourself easily. Okay, that takes a massive commitment in terms of expenditure and research time, and then getting that up in the air. That's a huge catch up you'll be playing if the other side has that advantage. And I think the Ukrainians generally do by the use of satellites, Western satellites, military satellites, and that's why I think it's worrying when the Chinese come along and help to kind of equalize that asymmetry. But something like this is relatively simple. You just whack a RPG on a drone and test it out and try it in as many different ways you can, and then bish bash bosh, you get it working. So same with the thermite. Just work out how the drone drops a bunch of thermite, get that on the drone, and then happy days or unhappy days, depending on which side of the thermite you're on. Okay, and also worryingly is just the sheer amount of money that Russia is spending on the war. But of course, then there are worries that this is unsustainable for Russia in an economic sense. So as mentioned, says Alexandra Prokopenko, Russia's military spending will remain elevated in 2025. So it's going up and it's remaining up. Our forecasts are once again confirmed. Defense spending in 2025 is projected to reach 13.2 trillion rubles. That's quite a lot. It's $142 billion. So that's their defense expenditure per year. Now, we were like whooping and hollering that the US gave $61 billion worth of aid to Ukraine after a 7-month hiatus. But actually only $25 billion of that was on military aid. And even most of that is actually spent inside the US. And so is Ukraine able to match the Russians pound for pound, dollar for dollar, in terms of defense expenditure? No, of course not. Is Ukraine, alongside or with all of its allies, able to match that? Well, that's going to be an interesting one. Again, it's all about eking out asymmetries and advantages. And if Russia has the advantage in the amount of money it's spending on this war, then Russia is in a much better position to be able to prevail in this war. So that's at the moment sort of 6.2% of their GDP. And yeah, that's a worryingly large sum of money, $142 billion. That's according to this source. Make that what you will. 40% of the budget will be allocated to national defense and domestic security. This highlights how Russia is seriously adapting its economy to long-term elevated military spending. The economic price of this doesn't seem to be a concern for Putin. The real cost will come soon, due now. Putin has the funds to cover those expenses for the next 12 months. Where does the money come from? Hydrocarbon export revenues, which is why it's so important to hammer those exports, and the price of oil and gas and their ability to transport that and sell it on the open markets. Tax increases and excise duties, improved tax collection on turnover taxes. Now, the problem there is that the rest of the economy is probably going to be deflated. We're hearing about the issues with construction at the moment. There's another nugget of that information coming out today. I talked about it in Yekaterinburg, or also in Moscow. The construction industry seems to be in trouble. So are you likely to get more tax increases where you can tax the I guess the state? This has happened. Gazprom has been heavily taxed, so it's making a loss, and they changed the tax on that. But the Russian defense manufacturers, I mean, it seems a bit weird to like heavily tax those when they are state owned, so on and so forth. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I don't know that they have many options to increase their tax and excise duties. A delay in fulfilling the promises made in the presidential address. I don't know what that pertains to. Ending the war won't mean a reduction in military spending. Putin will continue to build military power, even at a high cost to the economy, as has been argued elsewhere. This approach reflects how the Russian leadership prioritizes military strength over long-term economic stability. Kremlin's logic is simple. When the problem rises, we'll deal with it then. The Russians are going to be heavily reliant on hydrocarbons as a form of income. They also have a tendency to spend their wealth fund, their national wealth fund, and those reserves. I don't know how much longer they can dip into those safely. But anyway, that's enough from me today. I really appreciate your support. Thank you very much for the members of the channel. You keep this going as you all do in your own ways, guys. Just thank you very much for that. And possibly at some point this evening, I'll be able to find time to release the mapping update to you guys. Take care. Speak soon.